Okay, guys, the first question for you in this position is, if you were in charge of the black pieces, would you play c takes d4 in between move hitting the queen, or would you simply move the bishop to f6? Well, in this lesson, we're basically going to continue to learn about converting your games. You have an advantage. It could be more material, it could be a better position. How do we make sure that we don't blow it? And guys, I've been there myself too many times. I'm winning, I come out of the game with a draw or sometimes even losing. So we gotta get really good about this. Now, in the past, we already talked about taking an advantage and converting into an endgame, right? So taking from middle game, go to an endgame, simplify the game, and that's it. For example, in this position in front of you guys, if I did something like c takes d4, c takes d4, I trade queen for queen, rooks for rooks, bishops for knights, I'm going to end up with a king and pawn endgame that I know how to win easily. I have 2 versus 1 on the queen side. I'm going to create an outside pass pawn. The rest should be history if you have been following this course up to this point. However, this time, guys, we're going to talk about a different way to convert your advantage. In these 2 positions that we're going to review today, you're going to see how the black pieces take an extra pawn that they have, they give it back to transform that material advantage into a positional advantage. So it's a little bit of the opposite of what we covered a few lessons ago, where we talked about how strategy typically leads to tactics and we convert that way. Well, this is a little bit different. Now, let me go back here, guys. To answer the initial question, the move that they played here as the black pieces was actually bishop f6. And the moment I did bishop f6, I'm thinking of Kasparov and Ding. We had a lesson where they showed us how the fianchetto bishop sometimes, if it is blocked, not the case here, but if it's blocked, we could reroute it to a better diagonal. But anyhow, guys, bishop f6 was played. The white pieces said, okay, I'm going to get that pawn, so I'm not down material anymore. But if you look at it, now this bishop is going to be a monster. And the following move with the black pieces actually shows how much they understand these positions. Now, one thing before we move any further is that when we talked about the pair of bishops, guys, on lesson 112, I believe, we said that number one, bishops, they need targets. So when I go bishop f6 and they do d takes e5, automatically I got isolated pawn, isolated pawn, isolated pawn. This is something that my bishops are going to be able to collect. Before, it was not so easy for this bishop to do much, right? So after d takes e5, now the black pieces continue with a very powerful move. And I gotta tell you, for me to play b6 a few years ago, it would have been crazy. I would never go for it. Even though I had already read about it, I see many games where grandmasters do it. All I could think about is, what if I cannot convert? Then I'm going to go into an endgame where I'm losing. But guys, the moment I started to trust the process, trust these principles, I started to see better results, and I ended up getting the hang of it. At the beginning, you're probably not going to be able to convert, but the more you try it, the more you study it, you're going to perfect it, and it's going to become second nature for you. So b6, what is this for? Well, I'm offering a second pawn because after a takes b6, now not only is my bishop, my rook is also enjoying an open lines to get activated. Now, of course, queen is not going to take on b6 because we take on c3, that's a fork. But after knight e5, the question to you guys is, should we eliminate the powerful knight or not? Well, at this point in the course, you guys should know the answer to it. We're going to keep the bishop. Number one, I don't want to give up the pair of bishop so quickly. Number two, look at how my pawns are on light squares. That means I'm controlling light squares, but in contrast, my dark squares are weak. So the only thing that keeps my king side somehow safe is that I keep the dark square bishop to control the dark square. So if I give up that bishop, I'm already done, right? So of course, we don't want to take on e5, but the question is, what do we do? Because many times we understand these concepts. Okay, I cannot take the knight. I want to keep my pair of bishops, but we just cannot come up with a plan. Well, if you already went over lesson 138, you should know how to always come up with a plan. But specifically here, guys, the only thing I think about is, which of my pieces can I improve? I don't know what to do in any position. Which of my pieces can I improve? Well, in this position, they did something that we reinforced on lesson 107 with the Karpovian style. Rooks, not only can they attack through open files, but also through open ranks. And I know that a lot of you guys think of the 7th rank, the back rank, but honestly, any open rank could be very effective for our rook. So rook a4 was the move here. And then after queen b6, automatically we're going to start putting pressure on the targets. So this bishop cannot really hit c3 right now. The rook is putting pressure, but it's not ready to collect. So instead, we go after the pawn on h6. Now, a few things about this. Now, the white pieces went queen c7, clearly threatening checkmate. And guys, truth is that we can easily collect on h6, and we don't have to worry about this threat anymore. However, one of the reasons why I showed this game is because the black pieces didn't have like a clearly winning position. We have to really see through the lines and convert. But now look at the move that they did. Instead of just taking on h6, which is what any of us would do, they played queen e7. How many times have I told you, if I'm winning, I want to simplify the game. If I'm losing, like right now I'm down a pawn, I do not want to simplify the game. But here, queen e7, guys, not only am I getting rid of this threat forever, but after queen takes, bishop takes, yes, I'm down a pawn, but this is just momentary. I have the pair of bishops, active rook, and my opponent has isolated pawns, which, well, this one is not isolated, but it's weak, and I'm going to collect them. So once I get my material back, I'm going to have superior pieces, and I'm going to have targets. So this is the position, guys, the ideal position that we wanted to get to. And now that we have it, we have to continue to put pressure and play energetically. The only way we're going to lose this game is if we stay passive, if we make silly mistakes. So after bishop e7, we got knight d3. And guys, here, just for you to see the importance of understanding positional chess, instead of knight d3, the white pieces you have played, and if I show you here, you're going to see that the engine is recommending knight e2, knight f3. There's no knight d3 anywhere. And the third option is pawn to c4. And the idea behind pawn to c4 is very simple. If I play c4, I'm getting rid of my weakness, so there's no target for my opponent to put pressure on. But at the same time, I'm now separating the black pieces' pawns. So those pawns are going to be so powerful, all of a sudden they're going to be targets for my pieces to put pressure on. So this is just something to keep in mind. Now, I know that you might be thinking, okay, but what's the big deal? I'd rather, if I'm going to lose this pawn anyways, I'm going to wait here for them to use energy to get it. But it's not only about that, it's also about breaking down these two pawns, guys. So anyhow, we got knight d3 instead, and now we continue to be energetic. So rook a3, using our active pieces to put pressure on the weakness. So knight e2, then bishop goes to g5. Finally, I'm going to get that pawn. Pawn f4, bishop g7, and then after pawn g3 by the white pieces, yes, they're defending this pawn because it is on a semi-open file, but they continue to create more weaknesses. I have a rook hitting through the f file, the other one putting pressure on the a2 pawn, c3, but also on the g3 pawn that is now a base pawn. So anyhow, after pawn to g3, we got bishop g7, and guys, again, putting pressure all the time, putting pressure on c3, then knight goes to e5, and guys, finally, the other thing that we talked about on lesson 112 is that one of the benefits of having the pair of bishops is that we can give them up whenever we like. So here, yes, this time I'm going to take the knight because I'm able to penetrate with my rook. And look at this bishop that seems to be the bad bishop, and we've talked about this so many times. Even this bishop is going to find a good diagonal to become powerful and be energetic. So rook f3, putting pressure on the pawns. We got rook b1 trying to penetrate, but then after bishop a6, the white pieces simply resign. I'm hitting e2, and after that, everything is going to collapse. Now, I know that a lot of you might be asking, okay, what if instead of rook b1, what if they go king g2? Well, I'm going to go rook e3. You see the other weak pawn? It is just going to fall. The problem is that ultimately we have more active pieces, and the white pieces, guys, have 4 pawn islands, 4 isolated pawns. We have only 2 pawn islands. They have 4. So again, after, let me go back, bishop a6, the white pieces simply resign. Now, before we go to the next position to continue to reinforce this, don't forget you could take this position, set it up against the engine, see if you can convert. But anyhow, leave that for the end because we got one more position quickly here. And in this one, guys, look, the white pieces just played pawn to f5. And again, I chose this position. I liked it so much because It is not your typical, oh, the black pieces are clearly winning, try to convert here. It's not so easy how to come up with a plan. You really have to think, you have to evaluate the position. But once you do that, using what we've learned up to this point in the course, the plan, the continuation should be pretty easy to come up with. So take your time. If you want, pause the video, give it a few minutes. But here, guys, the move that the black pieces did was actually, and if I show you, look, I'm going to show you the engine's top move. The top move is actually knight e5. And believe it or not, this game that was played in 1928, the black pieces played knight e5. Now, I'm threatening to go to g4. This king is pretty exposed. And guys, the first thing you should have done, I'm not even asking you to do it because I'm assuming you're doing it every time. Pause the video and evaluate the position. So knight e5 was played. Forget about taking on e5. I'm going to take back. And now I'm going to get my material back. Plus, I'm putting a lot of pressure. Like, let's say they do something, I don't know, something bad like this. Well, I always have pawn e4, give me the bishop back. If you don't want to give me the bishop, well, I could continue with, I don't know, queen c5. Well, let me see. I think the engine is, well, bishop f5 even better. So bishop f5, and this is just too much. I'm more active. I have 3 pawns for the piece. This is just really easy to play now for the black pieces, right? So look at this, 430 according to the engine. Now, instead of taking on e5, we got h3. They don't want us to go to g4. Then knight goes to c4. Guys, same pattern. I have the pair of bishops. They're not as active yet. But one thing is for certain, I need to be energetic. I'm hitting the queen. If they take on c4, I take back with a tempo and I collect on f5. So after knight c4, we got queen f4. And now this is a moment, guys, where I would really like you to pause the video and just let me know in the comments, what move would you play? Again, at this point in the game, the black pieces are better, but it's not so clear how to convert. So I'm assuming that you pause the video and at least you considered queen d6 as a candidate move. We're up a pawn. If you're playing a game, if you're playing this game, you should know, you should be aware. But even if you're not, you always try to get a feeling for the position by counting the material. So here I'm up a pawn. Well, simplification. Let's simplify the game. And then we get into an endgame where I'm up a pawn. I'm putting pressure on f5. My bishop could get active through this diagonal. So this is definitely a move that makes sense. Now, if you said something like b5, rook e8, the engine is recommending that, but queen d6 has to be one of your candidate moves. So anyhow, queen d6 was played. The white pieces did not capture. Instead, we got knight c to e2. And forget about doing something like queen h4. If they want to completely avoid the threat of queens, they just can't, because then we have knight d2, rook b2, and then queen a3. And this gets really comfortable now for the black pieces. Instead, we got knight c to e2. So now we got rook e8. And guys, I'm not concerned, by the way, about bishop c4 at any moment. I can always trade queens, take on c4 with a tempo. And of course, f5 is always going to be a target. So instead, after rook e8, we got pawn to g4, then b6. Not only am I taking care of this threat on b7, my bishop could go to b7 or a6 if necessary, but ultimately, I gotta remember, I have a pawn priority on the queen side. I need to use that either to gain more space on the queen side or to create a passed pawn. So we got b6, then pawn to h4, and now pawn to c5. Just putting my pawn priority in motion. So bishop takes e4 finally. Now we take on f4 first, knight takes, d takes e4 with a tempo on the rook. And after rook c3, we simply take on d4, rook takes e4. And guys, this is the position that we were looking for. Very similar to what we got before. We got pair of bishops, which they're easy to activate, active rook, and this is positionally a huge advantage compared to the pawn that they're going to take on d4. And yes, we're not even going to try to defend the pawn. I'm pretty sure that if any of us were playing this game, we'll be thinking, oh, let me defend the pawn, and then the rook gets passive. Instead, the black pieces continued with bishop a6, energetic move, activating the bishop, and after rook takes e4, finally we activate the other rook. Guys, we gotta get comfortable with this. I know I've said it 200 times already at this point in the course, but we have to let ourselves go and trust this. Active pieces, it's a lot of compensation for any pawn that you could give up for it. So after rook c8, Rook d2, and what this is doing is also conditioning your intuition. So you're gonna be looking at positions like this. You're gonna be like, oh, I feel like I'm okay here. I feel like I'm better, and it's just because you've seen enough positions where this sort of activity compensates for the material. So rook d2 being passive. So passive rook, active rook. Passive rook, active rook. Active bishop, passive knight, right? And then after rook d2, this is the only piece that is doing nothing. How can I improve it? Well, bishop h6, already putting pressure on the knight, pinning it to the rook. And by the way, I have been here so many times where the white pieces are. It's so uncomfortable, and at this point, all I would like to do is give the material back just to release some of that pressure, right? But anyhow, knight goes to defend the knight on f4. It gets developed, opens up the rook, and now we gotta continue to be energetic, especially before this rook gets activated. So just like in the other game, Karpovian style, we go rook e4, putting pressure on that knight, activating my rook. So rook e4, g5, f takes g5. Now, if they take on g5 here, they didn't, but if they did, we could do, at first I thought of bishop g5, knight takes rook f4, but guys, I want to keep my bishop for a little bit longer. So even if you just go bishop f8, these bishops, look at this. This is like the two bishop checkmate. Combined with the rook, is just going to be dangerous. Not only is going to be about targeting isolated pawns, but even this king could get in a lot of trouble. So instead, we got knight d5, and that knight, guys, is now threatening a fork. Oh, sorry. And guess what? At this point, the black pieces said, go for it. So they took on h4, pinning the knight, and allowing this fork to capture the rook. Again, if you have this kind of positional understanding, you're going to be okay with it. After knight e7, king g7, knight c8, bishop c8, we got the pair of bishops, but also we got two extra pawns. These are passed pawns. Now, after king g3, we got bishop f5. Now we got 3 pawns for that exchange. And after knight f2, the question to you is, would you take on h1 and go for this endgame, or would you keep the rook? Well, in this position, if I show you guys the engine is saying play bishop e6, play rook takes rook, or even bishop c8. So the engine doesn't really care. But in the actual game, the black pieces played rook a4, and this makes perfect sense to me. So if I'm attacking, if I'm putting pressure, I want to keep pieces on the board, especially if I have a clear target. But you can see that up to this point, with this kind of advantage, you're already winning no matter what, right? So rook a4, we got rook d6, hitting h6 twice, but then we got check. So the active rook is working from the sides. And after king g2, we got bishop g6, and guys, this is just too much. So see how we went from a position like this all the way to a position like this. And in the other game, the same thing. We went from a position like this that it wasn't so clear what we had to do, and we ended up with a position like this with my active bishop, my active rooks, and it was everything because we were able to understand, okay, we got the pair of bishops, we gotta look for targets, we gotta keep our pieces active. So b6, again, just opening up lines. From that moment on, we just need to be energetic. So rook a4, energetic move, bishop g5, energetic move. Here, I'm just going to remove the only active piece they have, the only counterplay, and then I proceed with my superior pair of bishops, pair of rooks. So guys, let me know in the comments if we're going too fast, if this is too advanced, but definitely I gotta keep pushing you to that next level.